Welcome to our video about sewing tucks for a lovely amount of body and beauty in a skirt or petticoat. Now, tucked petticoats are seen throughout history many, many times, and they go in and out of fashion. They're also really nice for just modern skirts and as a first or early sewing project. They are relatively simple. They're not a complex design choice. They're pretty, and also, honestly, they help create some body at the hem end of your dress or skirt, which keeps the skirt from tangling into your legs. If you've ever felt like long skirts were awkward or uncomfortable, a lot of people who aren't used to them feel like they get kind of tangled up in them. And having tucks is an easy way to add some pretty interest to a long skirt and also gives it some body. And I'm going to be making a 18 teens petticoat, but you can use this skirt part for really anything. You're just making a tube, and then you're going to add some tucks. And then in part two, I'll talk about how to finish the waist. But it's a very simple project. But one of the ways you can make it easier for yourself, people think projects that have straight lines are going to be dead simple. And actually, straight lines can be some of the hardest things to sew accurately. So you want to give yourself the best chance to succeed. And that includes, for me, a couple of things. One is a walking foot. Walking feet, this is a standard walking foot. It is not special to even the style or year of my machine. It's a generic walking foot, and it is basically, as long as it fits the shank of your feed of your machine, it will work for your machine. So even if you have a vintage or antique machine or a very new machine and you have an older walking foot, it should still work. I like to have a walking foot for anything where I have long straight lines of stitching. And I also like to use my sewing table extension, which basically lets me use this short bed machine as if it was installed in a sewing table. Now, if you were like me, one of the major dangers of such a simple project is being seized by the spirit of procrastination. Like, say, when you should be pressing your most recently sewn tuck, maybe you start typing a letter to a friend who you haven't written to in about a decade. But for some reason, this is very, very important. Exactly when your project is literally staring at you as you type, and are apparently still jump scared by the force of the tab spring on this 80-year-old typewriter. It's aggressive. So yeah, I mean, life is a journey. Creativity does take rest, and just don't be too hard on yourself if occasionally you are literally looking at your project and somehow seized with the need to do something else. That said, as someone who often has to put down her projects for days or weeks at a time, even when she didn't mean to, I find another really important tool is my lint roller. I have cats. They like to jump onto my projects and to my ironing board, and lint roller just reduces the level of stress caused by that. So there you go. Now, to do straight tucks, I don't try to measure from the hem edge. I measure from the edge of the most recently folded piece. So This does have a subtle stripe. It's a figured linen, and it does make it easier to be sure I'm not getting way off grain on my tuck. But what I'm doing is I'm just going to press an inch and a half from the edge so that this first tuck will have a little gap between it and the visible segment of the hem. Just for me, that's a preference. I consider that beautiful to have a little bit of space. And now I'm going to show you the exciting fun of actually how I manage all the fabric. The primary problem or difficulty with a long straight seam like in a curtain or a petticoat is honestly just managing all of your fabric and keeping everything supported. Now, you'll notice that my hands are often behind the machine, and sometimes I'm even lifting the foot. That is not because the walking foot is not doing its job, which is to keep the two pieces of fabric going through the feet at the same speed. It is because the rest of the weight of the project can pull things askew. So what I'm doing is I'm gently trying to keep the rest of the fabric up with the walking foot so that you don't end up with a skew kind of underneath, or wrinkle sewn into that long, long seam. And then as you're adjusting and changing and managing the fabric, occasionally it just helps to lift the foot briefly and bring it back down, just so that any distortion or any pressure that has gotten wrinkled up under that foot doesn't end up in a sewn in wrinkle. And I've had that happen before. So I know I make this look so easy, but the bottom line is you just practice, relax, take a breather, maybe take a letter writing break if you're starting to get frustrated, and expect for a 100+ inch hem to take about half an hour total from start to finish on each tuck. So that is pressing the fabric, pressing the previous tuck down, pressing the new hard edge, and actually sewing it like from soup to nuts takes about 30 minutes total for me typically. And that means that if you see a petticoat with a dozen tucks in it, that took someone literally hours, and it's not a casual thing. So once again, appreciate your dressmakers, and if you see a garment that has many, many perfectly spaced tucks that are that each of those probably took at least 20 minutes, depending on how fast the person was and how carefully they were pressing, and honestly, how far apart the tucks were. Thanks so much for joining me. I look forward to hearing about your own projects. And if you don't already like and subscribe, please do that. And stay tuned for part 2, where we will talk about some ways to actually make this tube into a wearable project. See you soon.